You don't belong here." The words, sharp as shattered glass, slice through the opulent air of the boutique. They hang there, a stark violation of the carefully curated tranquility. The speaker, a peroxide blonde woman in her late 20s with impossibly glossy lips and a smile that doesn't warm her eyes, stands guard behind the polished onyx counter of Elysian, one of Rodeo Drive's most revered fashion temples. Her name tag reads Tiffany, style advisor, but her posture is that of a gatekeeper, defending a sacred sanctuary from the unworthy. The target of her venom is a woman who has just glided through the heavy gold-handled glass doors. Isabella Rossi, 38 years old, moves with the understated grace of a person who has navigated storms most couldn't fathom. She's dressed in a simple, exquisitely cut navy blazer and dark wash jeans that fit as though they were tailored just for her. Her dark, wavy hair is gathered loosely at the nape of her neck. There's no ostentatious jewelry, no it bag of the season clutched in her hand. Her elegance is a quiet language, spoken to those who are fluent in real style. But Tiffany isn't fluent. Neither is Chad Peterson, the store manager, who materializes from a back room with the smooth, predatory glide of a shark scenting blood in the water. His gaze sweeps over Isabella, a practiced dismissal perfected over years of cultivating an exclusionary atmosphere disguised as brand protection. They have no inkling they're looking at the very woman who spun this empire from a single, radical idea, who transformed a daring concept into a multi-million-dollar luxury behemoth. They perceive only what their narrow, sun-drenched Beverly Hills worldview permits them to see. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," Chad says, his voice a slick veneer of condescending politeness. "This boutique serves a very particular type of client." The insinuation lingers in the air, as thick and cloying as the expensive perfume misted around the entrance. A few other shoppers, adorned in the day's uniform of velour tracksuits and oversized sunglasses, pause, sensing a ripple in the calm, but not yet grasping its source. Isabella's fingertips gently brush against a silk scarf draped on a mannequin, the very one she personally championed during the last design review in Paris. She knows its weight, the specific dye lot of its cerulean blue, the story it's meant to tell. But she says nothing. Not yet. Instead, she observes. She listens. She files it all away. Because Isabella knows that sometimes the most resonant retort is a profound silence, and the most satisfying victory is born of patience. "You are about to learn a lesson you won't forget," she thinks, the ghost of a smile playing on her lips. They have no idea what they've just set in motion. Have you ever been made to feel like an outsider in a place you had every right to be? What goes through your mind in that split second between shock and response? Isabella Rossi had founded her empire on a single, defiant principle. Luxury was not a birthright, but a feeling, an experience to be enjoyed by anyone who valued artistry and had earned the means to acquire it. Her brand was for the bold, regardless of their zip code or the color of their skin. Standing here, in the flagship cathedral of that very empire, watching her own employees defile the core values she had meticulously woven into its fabric, felt like watching her own legacy curdle before her eyes. She ventures deeper into the store, her steps measured and calm, her eyes drinking in the familiar grandeur she had personally conceived 4 years prior. The Italian marble floors gleamed under the soft glow of Murano glass chandeliers. The curated garments were displayed like masterpieces against minimalist cream-colored walls. Every single detail was a reflection of her vision, her discerning taste, her profound understanding of what luxury truly signified. But the atmosphere now felt contaminated. Tiffany murmurs something to another associate, a young man with meticulously spiky, frosted-tipped hair, who lets out a nervous chuckle. Their eyes track Isabella's every move, their scrutiny as blatant and insulting as that of security guards monitoring a known thief. The bitter irony is not lost on her. She's being treated as a suspect in her own store by people whose salaries she personally approves. "Can I help you with something specific?" Tiffany's voice cuts in, laden with the subtext of a bouncer asking a vagrant to move along. She has positioned herself beside Isabella, her hand on her hip in a posture ready for a confrontation. Isabella turns, her face a mask of serene composure. "I'm just admiring the collection, thank you." Her voice is polished, a low, melodic tone that gives no hint of the hurricane gathering force within her. Over the years, she had mastered the art of speaking in a way that pacified insecure people, even when every fiber of her being screamed to unleash the formidable power she possessed. "Of course," Tiffany replies, but she doesn't budge. She hovers, making her surveillance painfully, deliberately obvious. "Were you looking for a gift? We do have some of our more accessible, ready-to-wear items in the back." The words are a direct hit, a slap in the face. Isabella has never, ever used the word accessible to mean cheaper. Elysian has no back section for less worthy clients. The entire brand ethos was about accessible luxury, yes, but not about creating a hierarchy of bargain bins hidden away like some embarrassing relative. Tiffany is either deliberately lying or is so profoundly inept that she doesn't grasp the foundational philosophy of the company that employs her. Chad reappears, as if summoned by some silent, prejudiced signal. "Ladies, is there a problem here?" His query is aimed squarely at Tiffany, completely erasing Isabella from the conversation, as if she were a piece of furniture. The dismissal is so automatic, so utterly complete, it momentarily steals Isabella's breath. "Everything is under control," Isabella states, her voice quiet but firm. "I was just taking a closer look at the fall collection." She gestures to a display featuring the very garments she'd championed during the last runway show, each one a testament to her philosophy of effortless elegance. Chad lets out a short, dismissive laugh. "Ah, that's our couture line. Extremely exclusive. Perhaps one of our other locations would be more comfortable for you." The veiled threat hangs in the air. There are no other locations in Beverly Hills. Elysian stands singular, a beacon of her unique vision. He is lying to her face, bold and unashamed, and they both are acutely aware of it. Isabella reaches into her blazer, her fingers finding her BlackBerry. It looks as if she's checking an email, but she's discreetly activating the voice memo function. If she is going to excise this cancerous behavior from her company, she will need irrefutable proof. "I think I'll browse a little longer," she says softly. "I find I have some time to kill." The statement is laced with a meaning that Chad and Tiffany cannot possibly comprehend. Time is a resource Isabella has in abundance, and patience is a blade she has spent a lifetime sharpening. She watches them exchange a look of mounting frustration and knows she is exactly where she needs to be. When faced with such blatant injustice, is it more powerful to react immediately or to wait and gather your strength? What determines the right moment to make your move? What they don't know is that her BlackBerry has just sent a discreet, pre-programmed message to Julian Vance, her COO. The message is a simple, two-digit code. Protocol 7. In their shared corporate shorthand, it means initiate immediate, covert documentation. Trouble at flagship. In practical terms, it means Julian is already at his desk in the New York headquarters, pulling up employee files, security camera feeds, and training records, preparing for the kind of corporate cleansing that occurs when a company's soul is on the line. The tension in the store builds like the quiet before a storm, the pressure gathering until an explosion feels inevitable. Chad decides to force the issue, believing, perhaps, that aggressive intimidation will succeed where his passive-aggressive dismissals have failed. He moves closer to Isabella, encroaching on her personal space with the practiced bullying of a man accustomed to using his physical presence as a tool of authority. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you a few standard questions." His voice has taken on an official, authoritative tone, one he expects to be met with immediate compliance. "What is your name? Do you have a credit card you intend to use for your purchases today? Have you shopped with us before?" The questions, on the surface, might sound like standard retail procedure, but they are dripping with accusation. Isabella recognizes the tactic. It's the same energy she encountered in her early days climbing the corporate ladder, when men like Chad would question her credentials, her background, her very right to be in a boardroom where major decisions were being made. It's the same prejudice, just wrapped in a designer suit. "I have a name," Isabella answers, her voice even and cool. "I have several credit cards, thank you. And yes, I've been in this store on numerous occasions." Each answer is precise, polite, and reveals nothing. She's not lying, but she's deliberately not giving them the satisfaction they crave. Tiffany moves to flank her, completing a semicircle of open hostility that makes a nearby couple pause and edge towards the door. "We've unfortunately had a number of instances of credit card fraud lately," Tiffany announces, her voice raised just enough for those nearby to hear clearly. "We just have to be extra careful and verify that our clients have the capacity to shop here." The insinuation is no longer veiled. It's a direct, public accusation. Isabella Rossi, founder and visionary, is being framed as a potential fraud in her own flagship store. The audacity would be laughable if the damage to her brand's integrity wasn't so severe. "What is your verification process, exactly?" Isabella asks, her tone still serene, but underscored with a sharp edge of challenge. "I'd be very interested to hear about it." Chad puffs out his chest, feigning consultation of some imaginary internal rule book. "Well, for new customers, we require a photo ID to match the credit card. And for purchases over a certain amount, we require a manual authorization call to the credit card company. We also reserve the right to inspect handbags if we suspect any irregularities." Every single word is a lie. Elysian's entire sales philosophy is built on discretion and trust. They've never required photo ID for standard purchases, never run manual checks except in clear cases of a declined card, and they have absolutely no policy granting them the right to search a customer's personal property. Chad is fabricating policy on the fly, using made-up rules as a weapon to justify his discrimination. Isabella's BlackBerry discreetly buzzes with a message from Julian. "Live feed from store cams up. Audio recording confirmed. Legal is on standby." She types back a swift, one-handed reply under the cover of her blazer. Let them continue. Need the full scope. Then she looks up at Chad, her smile now carrying a hint of danger that smart people would recognize. "Those are very thorough policies," she says softly. "I'd love to read them. Could you show me where they're posted for customer review?" Or perhaps you could provide me with a printed copy. The request is perfectly logical and utterly impossible for Chad to fulfill, as the policies exist only in his bigoted imagination. She watches him flounder, his manufactured confidence beginning to fray at the edges as he realizes he's been caught in a lie by someone far more knowledgeable about retail operations than he assumed. "They're internal guidelines," he stammers, "not necessarily for public posting." "I see," Isabella says, her voice level, but her eyes are now like a lens, recording every detail for a future reckoning. Internal guidelines that empower you to treat your customers like potential criminals based on nothing but your own assumptions. That is certainly a bold business strategy. Her comment audibly registers with the few remaining shoppers. Chad is starting to panic, realizing this confrontation is spiraling far beyond his control. He lacks the finesse for a graceful retreat. So, like most people who confuse aggression with strength, he decides to double down. This is the point of no return, isn't it? When a situation escalates from mere rudeness to an official threat. How would you handle the pressure of being publicly accused and outnumbered? The humiliation arrives not as a single wave, but as a series of calculated, escalating blows. Chad, feeling trapped by his own deceptions, evidently decides that his only way out is through a more vicious public offense. He gives a subtle nod to Tiffany, who approaches with the eager grin of a hyena sensing a kill. "Ma'am, I am now going to need to see some verification of your ability to make a purchase in this establishment," Chad declares, his voice booming across the marble floors, engineered for maximum public shaming. "Our items begin at $2,000 for a simple scarf and go up substantially from there. Can you please provide documentation of sufficient funds or a line of credit that would justify your presence here?" The demand is so profoundly outrageous, so flagrantly illegal and discriminatory, that several nearby customers let out audible gasps. A woman dripping in diamonds, who had been examining a handbag, freezes, her mouth agape in disbelief. A young couple by the shoe salon exchange looks of pure horror. Even the other store associates appear deeply uncomfortable, suddenly finding fascinating spots on the floor to stare at. But Isabella remains perfectly still, absorbing the public degradation with the fortitude of someone who has faced far greater monsters and lived to tell the tale. "I wasn't aware that one needed to pass a credit check simply to browse," she says, her voice a quiet counterpoint to his bombast. "Is that a new policy?" Tiffany scoffs, the sound sharp and ugly. "Honey, look at where you are. This isn't the Beverly Center. This isn't some department store where anyone can just wander in off the street. We serve a very exclusive clientele, and to be blunt, you don't fit the profile." The toxic words hang in the air, thick and poisonous. The prejudice is no longer cloaked in fake policies or professional jargon. It is raw, naked, and unapologetic, on full display for all to see. Several more customers begin to drift toward the exit, their discomfort at witnessing such a bald-faced act of discrimination palpable. "What profile is that exactly?" Isabella asks. Her voice remains tranquil, but it now carries a dangerous undertone, a hint of the depths below. "I am fascinated to learn how you determine who belongs in a store like this, and who does not." Chad steps forward, emboldened by Tiffany's brutal candor. "Look, I don't want to get into specifics, but let's just be realistic. Our typical client arrives in a certain kind of car, they live in a certain kind of neighborhood, they come from a certain kind of background. They understand quality, they appreciate artistry, and most importantly, they can afford it without having to think twice." He gestures expansively around the store, as if the clothing itself proves his point. These are not just clothes for people who shop at outlet malls. These are heirloom pieces for women who understand that luxury isn't just a price tag. It's a heritage, a legacy. It's about belonging to an exclusive club. The speech is clearly a well-rehearsed one, a script he likely deploys to weed out those he deems unworthy. But every word he utters is a nail in his own professional coffin, creating a record of blatant discrimination that will be impossible to defend. Isabella brings out her BlackBerry again, this time making no effort to be discreet. "I would like to record this conversation for my own records, if you don't mind," she says clearly. "You can't do that," Tiffany snaps, her hand twitching as if she might try to snatch the device. "That's illegal." "Actually," Isabella replies, the first glint of steel now hardening her voice. "In the state of California, it is perfectly legal to record a conversation in a public space, particularly when one is documenting discriminatory practices, but I do appreciate your sudden concern for the law." The comment lands with the force of a physical slap. Both employees flinch, the realization dawning that they are not dealing with the naive victim they had assumed. But instead of backing down, instead of grasping that they have made a catastrophic miscalculation, they prepare to escalate, one final time. Chad's face is now flushed with a mixture of rage and embarrassment. "Ma'am, I am formally asking you to leave the premises. You are disturbing our business and making our other clients uncomfortable." Isabella casts a slow look around the store, noting the few remaining clients who are indeed uncomfortable, but not because of her. They are uncomfortable because they are bearing witness to a grotesque display of prejudice that has shattered their perception of this elegant boutique. "I haven't disturbed anything," Isabella states softly. "I have merely asked questions and sought clarification on your policies. If that is what makes people uncomfortable here, then perhaps the problem is not with me." Her BlackBerry buzzes with another message from Julian. "Legal green lights intervention. Say the word." She types back, "Not yet. Let them dig the whole grave." Because Isabella understands something Chad and Tiffany do not. The deeper they dig this hole, the more complete and satisfying the collapse will be. The ultimate humiliation designed to strip away a person's dignity. Can you imagine the strength it takes to endure that kind of public shaming while knowing you hold all the power? What would be your breaking point? The escalation unfolds like a masterclass in self-destruction, each move more disastrous than the last. Chad, emboldened by his perceived authority and Tiffany's unwavering support, decides the time for subtlety is over. If veiled threats and public humiliation failed, perhaps a public spectacle of removal will finally drive his point home. "Tiffany, call mall security," he announces, pulling out his own flip phone with a dramatic flourish. "We have a trespasser who needs to be escorted from the property." The announcement electrifies the store. The last remaining customers freeze, their conversations ceasing. The associate with the frosted tips looks up in alarm. Even the soft, ambient music seems to recede into the background. Everyone present understands they are witnessing a pivotal moment, though few can grasp the full, disastrous scope of what is truly happening. Isabella watches the performance with a kind of detached fascination, like a sociologist observing a strange and primitive tribal rite. She sees the psychology at play with perfect clarity. Chad is attempting to reframe the narrative, to transform her from a customer into a threat, from a person into a problem. It's a classic, if clumsy, power play meant to consolidate his position as the protector of the tribe against the outsider. "Security is not necessary," she says calmly, but her voice is lost in the theater of Chad's performance. "We have been incredibly patient," he continues, his voice rising in volume for the benefit of his audience. We have tried to handle this with discretion and professionalism, but some people simply do not understand boundaries. They don't respect private property, and they don't appreciate the privilege of being allowed to enter an establishment of this caliber. Every word is carefully chosen to paint Isabella as the aggressor, the intruder, the ungrateful interloper. The technique is insidious in its cruelty, twisting discrimination to look like due diligence, prejudice to look like protection. Tiffany chimes in with theatrical relish. "We are seeing more and more of this lately," she says, addressing the other customers as if she were a lecturer explaining a social ill. People who think they are entitled to go anywhere, demand anything. People who think the world owes them something simply for showing up. The coded language is unmistakable to everyone in the room. They aren't talking about difficult customers. They're talking about people who look like Isabella, people who have the audacity to believe they belong in spaces from which they have been historically excluded. A young woman near the accessory counter slowly raises her own phone and begins to record the scene. An older gentleman standing by the cash wrap shakes his head slowly, though whether his disgust is directed at the employees or at Isabella remains unclear. The boutique has become a stage, and everyone is now part of the cast. Isabella's BlackBerry vibrates again. It's a new message, this time from her lead attorney, Eleanor Vance, Julian's sister. The alert was automatically triggered when Isabella began her recording. The message is succinct. Watching live feed. Have more than enough for a major discrimination suit. Recommend you extract. But Isabella isn't ready to be extracted. Not yet. She recognizes a pattern in Chad and Tiffany's behavior that goes beyond a simple lack of training. This is a system. It's practiced, polished, and perfected through repetition. This is not the first time they have done this, and it won't be the last, unless she puts a permanent end to it. Right here, right now. "I understand you're calling security," Isabella says, her voice cutting cleanly through Chad's monologue. "While we wait for them to arrive, perhaps you could articulate for everyone here exactly what crime I have committed that requires their intervention." The question is a direct challenge, delivered with a calm authority honed over years of high-stakes negotiations. It stops Chad in his tracks, forcing him to confront the chasm between his dramatic pronouncements and the objective reality of the situation. "You've been disruptive," he stammers, the specific charges clearly eluding him. "You've been argumentative, you've questioned our store policies, and you're making our other clients uncomfortable." "I have asked questions about your store's policies and requested clarification on your procedures," Isabella counters evenly. "If that is what passes for disruption in your establishment, I'd be fascinated to know how you manage to handle an actual customer complaint." Her response is perfectly calibrated to expose the absurdity of his position while she maintains her own unshakable dignity. But logic is not Chad's strong suit. Cornered, he becomes more aggressive. "Look, lady, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but this is a respectable business serving respectable people. We don't need troublemakers like you coming in here and stirring up drama." "Troublemakers," Isabella repeats, her eyebrows arching just slightly. "Is that what you call a customer who asks questions?" "I call it like I see it," Chad retorts, his professional mask finally crumbling away entirely. "And what I see is someone who doesn't belong here, trying to cause problems for no reason." The words hang in the air, a raw, brutal confession. Chad has just articulated his entire worldview. Some people belong, and some people don't, and anyone who questions that natural order is a troublemaker deserving of punishment. Sarah nods vigorously, thrilled that her manager has finally dropped all pretense. "Exactly. We know our clientele, and we know when someone is just here to cause trouble." Isabella's BlackBerry shows 5 missed calls from Julian and 3 messages from other board members who have clearly been alerted. She ignores them. She is focused entirely on Chad and Tiffany's final act. "I really do appreciate your honesty," she says, her voice soft, but laced with the kind of undertone that should make a person very, very nervous. "I'm sure your corporate headquarters will find your candor enlightening." The comment lands like a lead weight, and for the first time, a flicker of genuine fear crosses their faces. They exchange a quick glance, a dawning awareness that their words might have consequences beyond this room. But it's too late. The mall security guard, a heavyset man in an ill-fitting uniform who looks bored and annoyed, has arrived. The final act must play out. "Ma'am," the guard says wearily, "I'm going to have to ask you to come with me." Isabella looks at him, a flicker of pity in her eyes. "And if I decline?" "Then we will be forced to call the Beverly Hills Police Department and have you removed for trespassing," Chad announces, savoring the final threat. Isabella Rossi, founder and CEO of Elysian, is being threatened with arrest for trespassing in her own flagship store by employees who are moments away from detonating their own lives. She looks around the boutique one last time, her eyes cataloging the face of every person who spoke up and every person who chose to remain silent. Then she pulls out her BlackBerry and sends a single, succinct message to Julian. "Execute Protocol 9. Full disclosure. No mercy." Protocol 9 is the nuclear option, reserved only for crises that represent an existential threat to the company's core values. It triggers immediate and total corporate warfare, public relations engagement, legal action, a full-scale media blitz, and a complete corporate restructuring. It means that within the hour, this incident will be a national news story, and everyone involved will face consequences they could never have imagined. "I will leave voluntarily," Isabella says quietly, her voice imbued with the gravity of someone who knows exactly what is about to be unleashed. "But I assure you, this conversation is far from over. In fact, it's only just beginning." As she walks toward the golden doors, flanked by the security guard, she can already feel her BlackBerry buzzing incessantly. The revolution had begun. Do you believe in karma? Or is this simply the logical, satisfying outcome of unchecked arrogance meeting undeniable power? The denouement arrives like a bolt of lightning from a clear blue sky. Sudden, electrifying, and world-altering. Isabella has barely reached the threshold of the store when the main telephone line on the onyx counter begins to ring, its shrill cry piercing the tense silence that has descended upon the showroom. Tiffany answers, her voice still dripping with her practiced saccharine sales tone, but her expression melts from smug satisfaction to utter confusion within seconds. "Mr. Peterson," she calls out, her voice now tight with a dawning fear. "It's a Julian Vance from the New York office. He says it's an emergency." Chad takes the phone with the swagger of a man who believes he is untouchable, insulated by his title and the store's impressive sales figures. "Chad Peterson speaking." The one-sided conversation that follows is a silent movie of destruction, told entirely through Chad's crumbling facial expressions. His initial confidence morphs into confusion, then to deep concern, then to wide-eyed, abject horror as he grasps that his actions have not been happening in a vacuum. They have been monitored, recorded, and broadcast to the highest echelons of power in the company. Yes, sir, the woman is... Yes, she's still here. What do you mean, who is she?" Chad's voice cracks, climbing an octave with each new piece of information. "The CEO? What CEO? I I don't understand. The phone slips from his suddenly nerveless grasp, clattering onto the marble floor. Julian Vance's voice, tinny and distorted, but crystal clear in the acoustically perfect showroom, emanates from the fallen receiver. Mr. Peterson, you have just spent the better part of your morning harassing, discriminating against, and threatening to have arrested Isabella Rossi, the founder, CEO, and majority shareholder of this company. Ms. Rossi built Elysian from the ground up. She personally oversees the design of every collection, and she created the very luxury brand you profess to represent. You have approximately 30 seconds to find her and begin the most sincere and thorough apology of your professional career, assuming you wish to have a professional career after today. The words land like a concussion grenade, shattering reality for everyone in the room. The remaining customers gasp. The other employees stare, their faces slack with shock. Chad stands frozen, a man watching his own life flash before his eyes. But Isabella Rossi is no longer by the door. She is striding back into the heart of the showroom, her pace measured, her demeanor that of a queen reclaiming her throne. Her BlackBerry is pressed to her ear, and her voice is now infused with the unmistakable ring of command. Julian, thank you. Please conference in the entire board for an emergency meeting in 5 minutes. Eleanor, I need precedents for major civil rights lawsuits in the retail sector. Have them ready. David, she says, addressing her head of PR, prepare a press release. We are going with a full, transparent disclosure within the hour. She is conducting a symphony of corporate response, each instruction delivered with the precision of a master. The woman who, just moments before, was being dismissed as a vagrant is now revealed as the architect of their entire world. The cognitive dissonance is dizzying. Tiffany stands beside the fallen phone, her face ashen, her hands trembling as the full magnitude of her catastrophic error in judgment washes over her. This isn't just about losing a job. This is a career-ending, publicly documented scandal that will follow her for the rest of her life. Chad, meanwhile, appears to be in a state of catatonic shock. He stares at Isabella, his mind clearly struggling to reconcile two impossible contradictory realities. It's the look of a man who has just discovered that the fundamental laws of his universe are a lie. Ms. Rossi, he whispers, his voice barely a choked breath. We had no idea. Nobody told us. Isabella pauses her stream of commands and fixes him with a look of pure, cold fury. Told you what, Chad? That your CEO might be a woman? That the founder of your company might not look the way you expected? That the very luxury brand you claim to revere was built by precisely the kind of person you just spent an hour attempting to humiliate? Each question is a hammer blow, and Chad visibly flinches under their weight. He isn't just confronting the loss of his job. He is facing the utter demolition of his entire worldview. The large plasma screen on the far wall, which usually plays a loop of runway shows, suddenly flickers to life. The face of Julian Vance appears, stern and flanked by other executives. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian announces, his voice now booming through the store's integrated sound system. On behalf of Elysian, I want to extend my most profound apologies for the disgraceful conduct you have witnessed here today. What you have seen is a grotesque violation of every principle this company stands for. I assure you, immediate and decisive corrective action is being taken. He pauses for dramatic effect. Effective immediately, Chad Peterson and Tiffany Miller are terminated for gross misconduct, flagrant discrimination, and a complete dereliction of their duties. Security will escort them from the premises. They will not be eligible for rehire with this company or any of its global partners. The announcement is a tsunami, washing away the last remnants of the morning's toxic power dynamic. Customers who witnessed the ordeal begin to applaud. But Isabella is not finished. She steps forward, her own image now appearing on the screen as she addresses the room, her words being broadcast live to the corporate headquarters. "To everyone who saw what happened here today, I need you to understand something critical," she begins, her voice tight with a barely controlled passion. "This is not just about 2 employees. This is about a system that allows such prejudice to fester, a culture that can make such choices seem acceptable." She gestures around her beautiful store. "I built this company because I believe that beauty belongs to everyone. I believed that excellence knows no race, no background, no zip code. What you saw today was the poisoning of that vision by people who confused their own bigotry with professional judgment. But let me be clear, their failure does not tarnish the dream. It only strengthens our resolve to achieve it." The speech is already being clipped, shared, and going viral. Within minutes, Escalating is trending. Justice, swift and absolute. But is it enough? Does firing the perpetrators solve the underlying problem, or is it just a necessary first step? What does real accountability look to you? The aftermath unfolds with the cold, precise efficiency of a corporate machine built for crisis. Within 15 minutes, a team from Human Resources arrives with termination papers and non-disclosure agreements that will do little to protect Chad and Tiffany from public scorn, but will shield the company from further liability. Eleanor Vance, Isabella's lawyer, appears on a secondary screen, her face grim. "Ms. Razi, we've already identified multiple violations of federal anti-discrimination statutes and California's UNRRA Civil Rights Act. This incident will be the catalyst for a top-to-bottom audit of hiring, training, and management practices across all Elysian locations globally." The legal shockwaves are spreading, moving far beyond 2 disgraced employees to address the systemic failures that allowed them to flourish. This is no longer just about 2 people. It's about corporate culture, accountability, and oversight. Isabella walks through her store, and sees it with new eyes. She stops beside a rack of cashmere sweaters she personally selected for their texture and drape, and she sees her vision both celebrated and desecrated in the very same space. "Tiffany," she says quietly, approaching the young woman who is now openly sobbing as security waits. "I want you to understand. This is not happening because you're an inherently bad person. This is happening because you made choices. You chose to judge, to belittle, and to exclude. Those were your choices. These are the consequences." Hope flickers briefly in Tiffany's eyes, the desperate hope that explanation might lead to mercy. But Isabella's expression is resolute. "When I walked in, you had a choice. You could have greeted me with respect. When I asked questions, you could have answered them honestly. Instead, you chose to follow a script of prejudice. You must own that choice." Chad receives his own final judgment as the security guards begin to escort him away. "Mr. Peterson," Isabella calls out to him. "You asked if I belonged here. You questioned my right to be in this space, my ability to afford my own products, my worthiness to breathe this air. I want you to burn this moment into your memory. Remember exactly how it feels to learn that your entire worldview was not just wrong, but catastrophically, career-endingly wrong." She pauses. "You don't belong here. Not because of who you are, but because of what you did. Character matters. Integrity matters. And how you treat people when you think no one important is watching, that matters most of all." The moral force of her words hangs in the store. The customers who stayed behind to witness this moment of justice look on with approval. Media crews have now arrived, alerted by the social media storm, turning this internal incident into a national news story about race, class, and corporate responsibility. Isabella gives a short, powerful interview to a reporter. "This is about the quiet, insidious biases we all carry," she says, her voice steady. "And it's about whether companies have the courage to confront those biases head-on. Today was a painful reminder that the work of building a truly equitable world is never finished." As she speaks, she knows the real work is only just beginning. Humiliating two employees is not the solution. It's the catalyst. The real change will come from the tedious, unglamorous work of rewriting policy, mandating training, and transforming the very culture of the company she built. This painful public ordeal is not an ending. It's a beginning. In the quiet that follows the corporate storm, after the terminated employees have been escorted out and the media have their sound bites, Isabella Rossi gathers the remaining staff and the few customers who stayed to witness the entire saga. Her voice is no longer the sharp instrument of a CEO in crisis mode, but something softer, more reflective. "I want to tell you a story," she begins, the unexpected personal turn causing everyone to lean in. "When I was 26, I had just gotten my first significant promotion. I walked into a luxury boutique, not unlike this one, to buy myself a celebratory dress. I was wearing my best suit, carrying my most professional bag, feeling on top of the world. The store is silent. The saleswoman looked at me as if I were a ghost, something that didn't belong in her reality. She told me they didn't have my style. She suggested I'd be happier at a department store. When I finally chose a dress and pulled out my credit card, she held it up to the light as if it were a fake ID." Isabella's voice is steady, but it's clear the memory is a scar. "I bought the dress. I bought it because I could, and because I was determined not to let her smallness diminish my achievement. But the joy was gone. It had been tainted by her prejudice." A few customers nod slowly, a sad, shared understanding passing between strangers. "I made a promise to myself that day," Isabella continues. "I promised that if I ever gained the power to create my own spaces, they would be sanctuaries, places where beauty and excellence were the only currency that mattered. Elysian was born from that promise." She looks around the magnificent store, her creation, her sanctuary. What happened here today was a desecration of that promise. It's a harsh reminder that good intentions on a mission statement are not enough. A policy and a binder is not enough. The work of building an equitable culture requires constant, vigilant effort. From victim to victor, and now to leader, Isabella is trying to turn a humiliating experience into a teachable moment. Do you think people can truly change after witnessing something like this? Or do moments of high drama rarely lead to lasting personal growth? A young woman who had been recording the events on her phone tentatively asks, "Ms. Rossi, what happens now? How can we be sure this won't just happen again somewhere else?" It's the essential question. "That is the perfect question," Isabella replies, with a nod of genuine appreciation. And the honest answer is, we can't be sure. Not unless we all make it our business to ensure it doesn't. Change isn't passive. It's an active choice. She holds up her BlackBerry. "So here are the immediate choices I am making. First, every single Elysian employee worldwide will begin mandatory intensive bias and sensitivity training run by leading civil rights experts within 30 days. Second, we are installing an anonymous reporting system for both employees and customers to flag inappropriate conduct without any fear of reprisal. Third, we are creating new senior cultural officer positions whose sole job will be to audit our stores and ensure our values are being lived, not just laminated. The plans are concrete, signaling that this will not be swept under the rug. Furthermore, we are establishing a customer advocacy board to help us draft and ratify these new policies. And finally, we are launching the Elysian Foundation, a scholarship fund dedicated to supporting young people from underrepresented communities who want to build careers in the fashion industry. The comprehensive scope of the response demonstrates a deep understanding of the problem. This isn't just a PR fix, it's a blueprint for systemic change. But most importantly, she concludes, we are committing to 100% transparency. Our progress on these initiatives, our successes and our failures, will be made public. You, our community, will have the information you need to hold us accountable. And as the meeting concludes, a new energy fills the store. The remaining customers and staff begin talking to each other, processing what they have witnessed. This was more than just a corporate firing. It was a rare, public moment of justice. The ripple effects will continue for weeks, but for those in the room, the impact is immediate and personal. A powerful lesson that one person's courage can force a reckoning. Isabella walks through her store one last time, making a mental list of all that needs to be done. The crisis is over, but the work, the real, hard, transformative work, is just beginning. As she reaches the door, she stops and speaks to the young woman who asked the critical question. "Keep asking that question," she tells her quietly. "Everywhere you go, keep demanding answers, keep demanding accountability. Change only happens because people like you refuse to accept injustice as normal." The story ends, but the work continues. It must. It will. Today was a powerful and necessary beginning. The real test is what happens tomorrow. The story concludes, but the real work starts now. It asks a powerful question of us all. What do we do when we witness injustice, big or small? Are we silent witnesses, or are we the agents of the change we wish to see in the world?